3 pages of that declaration of the leaders talks about energy and renewable energy and the just acquisition of energy, talking about 600 million Africans, about half of the continent, that do not have access to electricity. And so yesterday we saw the European Union President, Ursula von der Leyen, saying about 7 million euros to Africa, saying that Africa is perhaps one of the best places where renewable energy can be found. Of course, as you know, in South Africa, Northern Cape, one of the best places. Most of the renewable energy projects, of course, located here in the Northern Cape. Let's talk about that with the acting CEO of the Northern Cape Economic Development Agency, Sean Modise. Sean, in terms of the Northern Cape, like we said, most of the projects coming here to the Northern Cape. Yeah. In terms of the investment and the monetary value of those investments.
Thank you so much, Ulrich. I think just to mention, about 59 projects have reached economic close, and 51 of those have actually been providing energy to the grid, as it were. What is important is that we've seen about 180 billion rand invested within the province, within that space. And ultimately, that really translates to what we've been able to achieve over the 15-year period. I think the REIPP program started in 2010. 4.7 gigs about that has been sort of generated. But what we've been able to evacuate into the grid consistently from the Northern Cape is about 3.7 gig. So about a significant amount of energy is really being dispersed from the province. And I just want to indicate what we consume is about half of that, only 1.4 for the entire province.
Now, Sean, we know that grid capacity is a very big issue in terms of what we can still have in the future. So that is basically the bottleneck to us having more renewable energy projects. How's your talks with Eskom?
No, I think there's been quite a tremendous move from our national government under the leadership of Minister Ramokgopa, where we've seen actually a dispersion from Eskom really creating an entity called NTCSA. And that was actually the birth of this new program that we're seeing happen also, actually underpinned by what we've seen happen in terms of investment in the REIPP program. So you would know that there's this independent transmission program that has been initiated where we went to market as South Africa. And I think the first phase of that is going to be what will be rolled out actually in this particular province to really unlock the capacity of the grid and enable the generation that will then start decarbonizing sort of key industries, enable our energy security and ensure that our energy resilience is then kept.
So we still have a lot of open spaces. We still have the sun. We still have the wind. We still have the Orange River for hydroelectricity. I mean, people, once we have this sorted out, the grid capacity issue, how are we going to get people to actually come and invest? What is what the Northern Cape government is saying to the people? Come and invest here.
No, 100%. Thank you so much for that. As provided, I think we have the Namakwa Special Economic Zone as one of the keynotes that was recently designated. We're working quite closely with the DTIC to see how do we expand that into an area called Bochuba, a very sacred and special area in the Richtersveld region. What we've been able to do also is to look at how do we start really building up on a sustainable pathway for development. So we deployed a strategic environmental assessment that is looking at about 5.8 million hectares, and that will become sort of the enabler for the industrial ambition that we have. In the province, we consistently speak about this Northern Cape Industrial Corridor, which essentially spans from a mining corridor in Yukagatu-Kuruman area, moving into the hinterland to an Uppington region that has actually been a game changer in the renewable space. We actually had quite strategic talks of late with Minister as well to see how do we start incorporating the advent of data centers as part of the mix. So those are sort of the type of investment that come in when you have the real estate, like we have, you indicated, we have sufficiency of land, we have the wind, we have the solar irradiation. Now we just need to enhance on a capacity of sort of consumption so that we actually have this generation juxtaposed to the consumption nodes. And then if you look at the beneficiation pathway that we're also churning in terms of our industrial corridor, we want to beneficiate our raw materials into actual products. And that creates sort of circular economic opportunities. And hence, within these special economic zones or industrial parks, we want to attract original equipment manufacturers that will be sort of putting up certain of these components from our raw materials. And I think emphatically what we've seen also in the critical raw material strategy, it has provided that the Northern Cape also is home to a couple of the critical ones that we require that become part and parcel of the pathway for our renewable future.
So just before we go, one of the biggest renewable energy projects, of course, is the hydrogen project at Boegoebaai. What is the update there?
As provided, what we've been doing is to make sure that we are able to really move beyond Sasol's pre-feasibility, which was actually concluded about 2 years ago. And then we actually realized that the tremendous volume of renewables that are required to fuel a 5 gigawatt sort of electrolyzer facility, it's about 10 gigawatt, which is what we've been able to aggregate in 10 to 15 years in South Africa. With that, you need to make sure that this development happens in a sustainable way. Hence, we did the strategic environmental assessment to identify pockets of land that will be actually ready for receiving either solar or wind renewables being deployed. It's not that it's an element of seeing the 100 megawatts that we've been seeing deployed. It's tremendous volumes and it has a cumulative impact. So in order to get this green molecule certified, you actually need to make sure that people understand that you're operating from a sustainability pathway. It has leverage or pivots in terms of the sort of ecosystem requiring desalination for the splitting of the water molecule in terms of the hydrogen molecule that needs to be created. So we had to make sure we understand how that looks and feels like. And it will require mass scale sort of green energy. And that is sort of coming to conclusion. We're actually at month 20 of 24 in terms of our strategic environmental assessment. So about March, we'll know exactly which areas are really open for this development, and we'll start issuing requests for proposals to see how do we then start deploying. First and foremost, potentially to then fuel directly into the electrolyzer facility, and then as the grid comes on, we will then start deploying additionality into the grid as well to make sure that we move in unison as part of our decarbonization agenda.
Thank you very much. Of course, that is Sean Modise, the acting Chief Executive of the NOEDA, of course, the Northern Cape Economic Development Agency, talking about the billions of investment that is expected in the Northern Cape in renewable energy over the next couple of weeks.